welcome to Curated Spaces, the community for curious travellers and slow living spaces. I'm Molly Cooper, and this is the podcast that's all about getting you off your phone and out there getting the good times rolling. Join me as I sit down with the founders and owners of boutique spaces to share their journeys as well as the inside scoop from brilliant people doing cool things in travel, design and hospitality. We just launched the brand new Curated Spaces platform, so if under the radar finds and exploring the best that the UK has to offer is a bit of you, then go and check it out and start planning your next staycation now. But I think that's quite enough shameless plugging for one episode, so let's go straight into today's conversation. In today's Snapshot episode, I'm delighted to welcome not one but two podcast and design queens to Curated Spaces. Host of the Ins and Outs podcast, Jojo and Polly are all about making design accessible, dispelling myths of the design industry and helping people understand the relationship between their interiors and exteriors. Jojo, Polly, can't wait to talk all things design with you. Welcome to Curated Spaces. How are you doing today?
Great, thanks for having us.
Well, thank you very much. This is all very exciting.
Our first guest appearance.
I actually haven't been asked on a podcast yet, so I'm hoping for an invite one day. Not necessarily onto yours, but it must be nice to be the guest for a change.
It is. I'm quite nervous.
You've dressed the part in your matching green stripes, which is iconic.
Yeah, totally unintentional. But I kind of knew that Polly would turn up in a green and white shirt, and I thought, I'm just going to put mine on just in case, because I've never worn this
first
before.
Outing.
So it's first outing. But Polly loves a striped shirt, so...
I love a striped shirt, and frankly, I love to match you, my friend, so here we are.
And I love a stripe, so there you go, so matchy.
Well, setting the tone, I love it, I'm here for it. And I'd love to start with actually hearing a bit about both of you guys and your backgrounds, how you met, how the podcast came about. Yeah, tell me the backstory of Jojo and Polly.
Oh, over to you first, my love.
Oh, you're going to put it on me, are you?
I love passing the reins. I love
Thanks,
it.
Barr. Jojo and I met, I think it must have been, do you remember the sort of slow exit of COVID where we were in the full-on lockdown and then the weird sort of hokey-cokey of sort of lockdown and then not? I think Jojo and I really bonded during that time on Instagram, God bless it. So
we crushed on each other's gardens and interiors, didn't we? And we had that sort of like, I just thought I'd let you know, I think you're great. And then she's like, oh my God, I think you're great too. We still don't know who reached out first, do we? Oh no, you looked it up.
Mutual fangirling.
I can't remember who reached out first, but I'm going to say
I bet it was me.
Yeah. Playing it real cool,
like
I was. Anyway.
So then I guess we just sort of slowly evolved over social media. We didn't actually meet for about 18 months after connecting. Yeah.
And the first time we actually connected, we became sort of pals, I guess, because there was never any conflict between us in the sense that Polly's a landscape designer and I'm an interior designer, and therefore we were very much became work pals, able to sort of really help each other out with, client questions, and I think we're at exactly the same point in our careers as well. So I think we just became great mates through that as well. We call each other our work wives. Like she's my first point of call when I have a sort of, tricky client question, I pick up the phone to Paul or vice versa. So, or like a, design conundrum or whatever it is. So it's really lovely to have each other. But actually what we did, the Ins and Outs didn't start as a podcast. It actually started on Instagram. We run on this slow exit, as Paul said, out of COVID. We actually started the Ins and Outs as an Instagram live. And so we would, I think it's because on an Instagram live, I think people could ask quick questions.
Yeah.
So I think we were just kind of quick firing questions, and it got such an amazing response. But then life got back in the way, and I think we just both threw ourselves at work and we stopped doing it. But we always sort of talked about the possibility of doing a podcast together. And then super randomly, a girl that worked for me, Jackie, her husband happened to be a podcast producer. And so this opportunity came up that we thought, let's just grab it and go for it. And I called Paul one day and said, look, I've just had this really long chat with Andy, our amazing podcast producer who's still with us now. And I said, shall we just go for it? And she's like, let's do it. And that was it. And we just literally ordered all our equipment and jumped straight in. And then now, how long's it been, Paul? Like nine months or something?
9 months. Yeah. September will be our anniversary.
Yeah. I mean,
did you launch in September?
Yeah.
Launched in September.
I launched in September 27th.
Oh, did you?
Born into my memory forever.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was a time for podcasts, wasn't it?
It's a podcast. Yeah, I think it was. I think we obviously jumped on at the right time.
Yeah.
But I've been a background on me is I started out in the interior design world a really long time ago. Actually, you wouldn't think so, because I've not done anything. I've had my head stuck in the ground and not done anything in the way of PR or PRing myself. But my business, I've been in the interior design industry for 17 years working as a designer, but I started up House 9 years ago. So, which is quite a long time, actually. I feel like I've been around a long time, but like I said, I've been sort of like head down, just getting on with it. And so I run a design practice called House 9 Design, and we're based out of Notting Hill. And we work on high-end residential, commercial hotel projects all around the UK and overseas. So that's a little bit of background on me.
Amazing. And I run my own studio as well. I have done for 8 years now. We're based in Surrey, but we design residential gardens and commercial landscapes all over the UK. But I feel like my summary was a lot shorter than Jojo's. But that's it.
Short and snappy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I guess the whole reason why Jojo and I found each other is because we're both such strong advocates that you can't design either in isolation. You can't design a garden without looking at what's going on in the house, and you can design an interior without looking at your garden, but eventually the garden's going to let the beautiful interiors down. So the two really go hand in hand, and that's hence the ins and outs.
Yeah,
I love it. The yin and the yang.
Who's the yin? Who's the yang, baby?
Oh, good question.
I mean, I have to be the 9 part, right? So you're the 6.
That's
naturally.
Very well.
And it's so interesting, because I don't think when we started it we knew quite how well it was going to go, or the sort of direction in which it would take. And it feels like it's opening up lots of doors, but we just genuinely absolutely love it. Like I love my Thursday mornings or Thursday evenings tuning in with Paul and having our catch up and talking about all things design. And it's been, it's brilliant. It's I'm not going to lie, it's not easy squeezing it in around our work. It takes a lot of, commitment, but it's turning out to be so worth it.
Mm-hmm. I think podcasts are amazing for meeting new people. Like, we wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for a podcast, but also you find that like little weird tribe online that you would never have interacted with, like your Instagram live, and you meet this new sort of little gang of people who are just really interested in the same things as you. And I think there's such a nice medium to share these like experiences, thoughts, stories, advice, but in a very like friendly, consumable way. So I love a podcast, me.
I never used to listen to podcasts before.
Really?
No, genuinely, I think I started listening to podcasts pretty much when we started the podcast. I wasn't a podcast girl at all. So that was quite unusual. What sort of podcast do you love tuning into?
I love a serial killer one. Oof.
Oh, do you?
Oh,
Paul, you love a serial
killer
one. Polly loves a serial killer.
I do, but I love all podcasts. I listen to an extraordinary number per day because I spend so much of my life in the car.
Yeah, because I started this podcast driving around the country talking to spaces, and listen to a lot of podcasts, but actually 5 hours of serial killers on the way down to Cornwall is too much. I've worked out the limit is 3
That's
episodes.
Putting you in a very dark place, isn't it?
I do also find you pick up a lot of tips when you listen to other podcasts as well, don't you? Sort of really listen to
with the serial killers.
I mean, well, we know where you bury dead bodies, Paul. On our last episode, we talked about where Polly would bury a really good dinner table chat is where you would bury a dead body.
Ooh.
So come on, Molly, where would you bury a dead body?
My friend has a pig farm in Somerset, so I take them down there and chuck them to the pigs.
Yeah, that's what my dad said, the pigs, which I thought was...
You've thought that one through. That's not the first time you've thought that, because that answer came to you like that.
Honestly, I'm telling you, 5 hours down to Cornwall, that is thinking time.
Maybe that's where,
Wait, so what was yours? The dining room table?
No. Paul's was under her patio.
That's good. Mm-hmm.
As Jojo suggests, I've got multiple access to sort of under patio situations. So I've actually got a massive soakaway hole in my lawn at the moment, and that's prime for.
It does look like a grave. It looks like a grave.
Yeah, it does.
And no one will be suspicious when you bring out the machinery.
No, exactly.
Ooh, no one would know. How about you, Jojo?
Do you know, I hadn't really given it enough thought. Maybe I'd like tuck them up.
What's wrong with you?
Maybe up in the loft. Maybe in the loft.
The loft.
I think that's going to smell, my
Wouldn't it
friend.
get a bit stinky?
Oh, God, you girls are really good at this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like Polly and Molly, the serial killer fanatics.
Yeah, exactly. You two are just like, right, I'm gonna go now, girls, because this is getting all freaking weird.
Look, we've got our plan sorted out, so and actually pigs will eat everything, won't they? I was watching Clarkson's Farm the other day, and
I love Clarkson's
Love Clarkson's Farm.
Oh, so good.
Okay, at risk of another tangent onto more pigs and
yes.
Let's talk about the Chelsea Flower Show, because it's about to kick off as we're recording this. The sun is shining. It feels like summer's around the corner. I know you guys are working on something quite special. I'd love to hear about your experiences with it and what you've got up your sleeves for this year.
Yes, so we're both working with Project Giving Back this year, actually. So I'm not exhibiting this year. I've exhibited for the last 2 years in a row. So I'm having a year off, and instead I'm working with Project Giving Back, doing lots of recording of sort of behind the scenes of the gardens being built. I'll be interviewing all of the designers about their plants and their sustainable choices and materials. So I'll be there all through the build and all through the show, sort of giving little snippets of behind the scenes. And then Jojo, over to you, my darling.
I'm actually designing the stand for the 3rd year in a row for Project Giving Back, which is really exciting and a real privilege, because you don't get many interior designers at Chelsea Flower Show, obviously. So it's a real treat for me, and because I've become a garden fanatic. And every year, because I know more and more through my wonderful mate here, I feel like it becomes more and more exciting for me to go and experience these gardens and see what it's all about. So it's this stand is sort of bigger and better every year as the charity grows, and they get more sort of they get more funding and more awareness. So it's a really decent size now, and it's in a slightly different location. And actually, Polly and I are really excited because we're going to be doing our first live podcast from Chelsea Flower Show, from the stand, from the Project Giving Back stand. So really exciting. But the interiors, every year we've worked with Project Giving Back, the interiors are, I suppose you could say, slightly biophilic, in that we really think about and consider the outside to ensure that we're creating essentially a foundation for the plants. And therefore, we all of our colour palette anyway at House 9 is quite earthy, it's quite natural. I definitely take inspiration from the colours outside, and therefore I sort of feel like we're quite a good fit, I suppose, as a designer for this stand. And anyway, there's a company called Palais who are doing these crazy, they're very sort of modernistic flower displays that's going to be wrapping itself all around the stand. So we have to be really considerate when designing the stand that these flowers would complement as opposed to clash. So there's a lot of things like that we have to consider. But and there's a lot of rules at Chelsea. I don't know if anyone knows this, but there's
lot of rules of
things you're not allowed to use. Certain plants you can't use. Certain aren't they, Paul? No, definitely no fake flowers, no dried flowers.
That would not go down well.
No fake flowers, no dried flowers. What else isn't there allowed? No, I think you're allowed things like cacti, or things like that.
Well, there's certain plants you've got to be really careful with in terms of when they were imported, because you need to make sure that we're not bringing any nasties in from abroad. So there are various rules, and obviously nothing invasive as well for obvious reasons. So they're all there for good reasons.
All there for good reason. But it's funny, as a total novice, and when we first started designing the stand of year 1, and we got this list of the things that we weren't allowed, we're like, oh my God, this is also sort of quite new to us, So, but it's been so fun learning.
Surely the no faux plants is a given, though.
That's a given. That's an absolute given.
No,
but the strange thing is, though, Paul, that you won't. Well, I know inside last year your show garden was obviously in not the hall. What's it called? The
pavilion.
The hard thing is obviously Chelsea Flower Show is a week long, and you have these trade stands that are undercover and that don't get any natural light. And therefore you are trying to keep things alive for an entire week, and therefore you have to be so considerate of what you can put on your stand. So you can't even put a few.
It's really tricky.
It's really tricky, isn't it?
It's really tricky. So both times I've exhibited at Chelsea, the first was with Project Giving Back, which is why they've got such a special place in my heart, because their whole ethos is gardens for good causes. So they benefit so many charities. Every garden you see at Chelsea from Project Giving Back is supporting a charity. And both times I have been in the pavilion. So I have had to plant a garden above ground, because you can't dig, and under essentially a very large tent. and then trying to negotiate the lack of weather and the lack of sunlight. I mean, that's not the day job to plant indoors, a garden like that. So a real challenge. So yes, Jojo, enjoy that.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. And then you're going in and watering
really
them, but then you
difficult.
can't overwater them because you don't know. And then sometimes it can get really stifling hot because it's obviously becomes a bit like a greenhouse. And then it's like these flowers aren't necessarily used to, are they, Paul? These plants are like, oh, what's going on? So anyway, fun and games. It is absolute chaos. I have to tell you that you've basically got 2 days to set up. And so everybody is frantically running around with high-vis vests on. Like, you've never seen anything like it. I mean, it's madness, isn't it, Paul? And then you would never know it when you walk in there on a Monday morning and the gates open and it's just calm. Everything looks absolutely immaculate. But the day before, the night before, you've literally got people on their hands and knees, like with a little brush, like getting rid of tiny bits of soil and, trying to revive these little plants. And it's so exciting, but it's such an amazing experience. It's like the Royal Wimbledon of flowers. It's great.
And have you seen any disasters or near misses over the years, or has anyone had to pivot when something's gone wrong?
I mean, I had a disaster. So the first year I did it, well, not so much of a disaster. The first year I did it, you're judged, and you're judged essentially twice. And a trick at Chelsea, but also in garden design, is to dye your water black. It makes it more reflective. So if you want that sort of look of sort of reflective water, we put in this very clever dye, which gets it darker, so you get the shadows. And I'd use that in my water reel. And the night before judging, a fox had gone onto my garden, gone into the water, and then walked its little inky footprints all over my concrete paving. And this is concrete's extremely porous, so it's not like a lovely polished surface you can wipe it off. So I had the indentations of a little fox's footprints all down my pathway just before judging. So I had to declare that and be like, obviously, like, nature has intervened here.
No, you were like, I planned that. I planned this natural.
Yeah, I really wanted this really natural sort of. Yes, I wanted fox footsteps. So that was, I guess, my biggest disaster on that one. That was just stressful.
Quite a sweet one though. My cats, I got the white sofa before I got cats, and like the number of little, you come in the morning, it's just like a little paw print all the way down. Thanks boys, thanks.
Oh no.
And I love something you mentioned just there, this idea of like gardens for good, because I feel like maybe when you think Chelsea Flower Show or gardening in general, you do tend to think like a certain type of person in a certain type of like house, maybe doing a certain type of thing, whereas actually I think there's been a shift, and maybe especially over COVID when people were suddenly like trapped at home with like limited outdoor access, this sort of shift in bringing gardens to maybe balconies or like tiny terraces, or just planting some seeds in your windowsill and seeing what happens. And I think they can do so much good. I actually the other week got a few of my girlfriends and we went to Crystal Palace to go to a garden centre, and I bought a trellis and 3 climbers and a bag of compost, and we had the best day out. It was so good. We felt so whole afterwards, just walking around looking at the plants. So I'd love to hear a bit about how you've seen this sort of shift in gardening in general, and maybe any advice you have for people like me who have limited outdoor space as urban dwellers, and maybe how they could get started on their own gardening journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think COVID was a real watershed moment. I think from shifting to people that had large gardens, or maybe a slightly older generation who love gardening, I think COVID forced everyone to turn their attention to the outdoors and what they could use their space for, because obviously we were all trapped inside. And so even the smallest of balconies was a really precious escape. So I definitely think it shifted the mindset of a new generation. And I mean, the mental health, I studied as a counsellor before I was a garden designer, and the mental health benefits of being outdoors, of having your hands in the soil, it's just second to none in my view. And it's been a real sanctuary for me through the years. And I think, I think you can garden on any scale. And I hate that sort of slightly old fashioned, slightly snobbish view that gardening is only if you have an acre plus and sort of rolling hills and beautiful woven willow and vegetable beds. That's not a life that many of us can achieve anymore. So many more of us have either smaller gardens with balconies or courtyards or even a windowsill. And I think there's, as Beth Chatto said, right plant, right place. So it's just about choosing the right plants for the area that you have, whatever that area is, even if it's house plants, because it's been a bit of a debate as to whether gardening houseplants is gardening, and to me, of course it is. Like, it's dealing with plants. So, I mean, in terms of getting started, I think the best thing that you can do is understand the sunlight of your space. And I think that's the bit which everyone trips up on, is just buying the plants that look nice as opposed to the plants that work for the space you have. And if you've got some sort of boiling hot balcony that's absolutely baked all day, then you need to plan for sort of very resilient plants that are going to be able to cope with the beating sun, wind, possibly rain, depends. Mm-hmm. So it's more about just choosing those that are going to sit with your environment. I mean, I started gardening in Earl's Court, overlooking the giant 24-hour Tesco on a little balcony, and I had just enough room for one grow bag, and I just grew tomatoes because it was so hot that I would just get months and months and months of tomatoes. But that's all I could fit, and I loved it.
You know what? Tomatoes are very rewarding, aren't they? You get a lot of bang for your buck with tomatoes. Yeah,
exactly. You just keep on going. So
I do think I think that's probably why the work that Project Giving Back does is so special, because, like you say, not everybody has access to gardens, and especially in these communities where you might have a tiny little patch that you can create a garden that the community can all become involved in. And that's really special. Like, that's sort of something that it's getting out in nature. Everybody knows the power of nature and how much it can help mental health. And, you know, it's so important. And I think certainly, like Paul said, I think through COVID, I think we spent so much time at home, certainly changed the interiors industry for the good, I think. But it did the same in the garden. I think people suddenly became, what else was there to do apart from sort of tend to your garden and change up your house? So everyone was sort of spending their lives and being here and home based, and, you know, buying DIY stuff and suddenly putting their hand to decorating and gardening. It's, you know, it's brilliant. So it's been great. This is what's been so kind of wonderful about, I think, both our industries, is that something has, one of the positives that came out of COVID was this real shift, I think, in people's perceptions of interior design and landscape design, and that it's suddenly not this sort of quite high end, slightly snobbery. Do you know what I mean, Paul? What I'm trying to say? It's suddenly become much more accessible, and anyone can do it. And, you know, you don't need lots of money to do nice things to your home and your garden.
That's sort of why the podcast came about, wasn't it? To be able to give that advice to people that might never work with us, but that still, you know, want a fabulous garden and house, and hopefully we help.
And there's nothing more important than home and how we feel about our homes, and that's why we offer all this, you know, helpful advice. Some of it not helpful, some of it really stupid, but, you know, we're here for a laugh just as much as the advice. So. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'd love to go into that, because I think you're so right. There was this big shift in, I don't know about you, but when you're especially living in London and you tend to be out quite a lot anyway, and home is kind of like a base to come back to maybe. Whereas now I feel like people really see their homes as places to retreat to. It's a busy, hectic world, and actually having somewhere calm that nurtures you and fills you to go back to the end of a hectic day is like so important to so many people now. I'd love to hear, Jojo, how you've seen this shift unfold and sort of the rise of sustainability as well. People looking not to just chuck everything out and buy everything back in, but how can they upcycle or reuse or just put some more TLC into their space with what they've got?
Yeah, I mean, I think upcycling has been around for a long time. People have been doing it for years, but I think, again, you know, cost of things has gone up hugely. Inflation has obviously, you know, meant that people sort of don't want to have to go and constantly. I think what happened after COVID, and, you know, obviously just after Brexit, we didn't really get to experience Brexit until obviously the sort of COVID had just about come out from that horror show. So I think what I saw what happened is that suddenly the interiors industry became absolutely flooded. Everybody sort of suddenly thought, you know, sort of home reno mums, and everybody sort of doing up their houses and starting Instagram accounts, look how easy it is. And it became, in my eyes, that's the one thing I didn't like, is that everything became quite almost like the fast fashion of the interiors world. I didn't like the fact that suddenly everybody was just, you know, chucking stuff out, replacing it. Look what I've just bought from wherever, you know, and it almost became so over consume, this huge sort of over consumerism that I felt was almost a little bit. I personally, I like sustainability is very important to us, and understanding the origins of something. And I don't just like to buy something just because I think it's a fad. I want something that's going to last and that's going to stand the test of time. and that feeds through into all of the designs that we do for our clients. We want them to last, and I think that trend certainly was around for a good 2-3 years, where it just became almost a bit vulgar. I think how much people were just chucking stuff out, replacing it with new, buying really cheap as well. And then I think suddenly this, because obviously, there's sort of huge job losses and inflation, and suddenly people were thinking, actually, I don't have the money to go and do that anymore. And then I think suddenly there was this shift towards going to antique markets, buying things secondhand, buying vintage, buying things online, and then upcycling again is something that has been around for a long time, but it saw a complete revival. And I think suddenly it didn't become like, oh, you're recycling something. It became like, oh, that's really cool. What did you pick up from that secondhand shop or that charity shop? So I think it's about the combination. It's about combining old and new together, that I think is what gives a property and an interior some soul. So
I love that. And I know we mentioned at the beginning this sort of relationship between interiors and exteriors. And I'd love to know, like, if you were giving someone advice, where would you start? Would you start inside or outside? Or would you start sort of like above that and you think of an overarching thing? How would you sort of explain that to people?
Oh, I
mean, I guess our mantra is to do them both together, don't they?
Yeah, we do. But do the interiors first.
Here she goes. Oh, shut up. Do the garden first. The garden is never first. It's always such a joy when it is. I mean, the whole thing needs to be looked at holistically. Our sort of mantra is to assemble your A-team all at once. So, but not just interior and garden, architect too, because often people make the mistake of going to the architect first. They do everything. They have a bit of a go at the garden. They'll often have a go at the floor plans as well. And then when that's sort of all rumbling through, then they start reaching out to the interior and garden designer. And actually there are expertise and knowledge that we can bring to the table all the way at the beginning. It's like, oh, hang on, just sight lines here. There's something really important in the garden that if you put the doors there, or Jojo is like the queen of unpickling a floor plan. I mean, her floor plans are sensational. So it's really a case of there is no time that is too soon. And it's having that holistic approach to the garden and the interior all at the same time, even if they're not done all at the same time. And they very rarely are, because, that requires sort of an unlimited budget to do house, garden, everything all at once. Having that plan means that there are no rush decisions, no mistakes, and no, if only we had moments. Jojo, would you agree?
I would, totally agree, of course. I mean, the one thing, usually the interiors go first because of the mess that's made with interiors. If you think about the stuff that's being dragged out of the house, dragged across the lawn, skips on the front driveway, the garden is going to get wrecked. Yeah. So that's why we tend to focus on the interiors first, because it kind of tends to go first. However, what I've learned from working with Paul and on projects that we've worked on together as well is that the timing of, you can't just go, I like that tree, pop it in the ground. There's a time that tree has to go in the ground. So it's actually, if anything, this is why it's essential to get your landscape design sorted at the same time, because it's not just like, you can't just suddenly have a garden in the summer. It can't be Christmas and go, I want a garden that looks like that in the summer. That's what I've come to learn, and it's really interesting. If you think a garden's going to take a good year, isn't it, Paul? Really, to start looking like you want it to look.
It is. So you've got that, but you've also got, and I'm learning this myself for the first time, from my own personal experience, that I am doing a house renovation right now, and the builders are already asking me what my finished floor levels outside are going to be, i.e., what level is my patio going to be at. If you haven't designed your garden, then you're going to need to just make up an answer to that and then worry about how that fits in with the space later. And it's often that little crucial point can be the make or break of going, damn it, we rushed that decision, we didn't think it through, and now we've got massive level change, or we can't plant plants, or whatever it might be,
like a dodgy threshold.
So I'm learning it firsthand for myself. I obviously have already been preaching it to clients for years, but for myself, fortunately, I've done the design and have practiced what I preach, and I had a very good interior designer working on the interiors.
Who's that?
Obviously. God, I feel like I was cheating on you if I worked with someone else, wouldn't it?
Can you imagine?
You would be.
So it's crucial.
The ins and outs would be over. Crucial. It would just be the outs. Doesn't sound the same. Doesn't sound as good.
It doesn't, does it? If you get kicked out, Polly, you can come and do a serial killer podcast with me.
Yeah, exactly.
And all it would be is just exploring different places that we would hide bodies, and how likely we are to get away with it. Sort of like scale of 1 to 10.
Love that.
And you could call it Who Done It.
Who done it? Who dug it? Or We can brainstorm. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just call it the pigs.
Trademarking that now.
Trademark.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, well, it's been so lovely chatting. I do always have a quick fire round to wrap up if you're up for it. These will be interiors, garden-esque related. So, first one, what is your go-to plant that's unkillable?
Oh, that's unkillable. Geranium Roseanne. You can't kill that. Geranium. Well, it's not unkillable. All plants are killable, but I blooming love a geranium Roseanne. That's a pretty bulletproof perennial that will just keep coming back, keep flowers for like months and months and months. I feel like a cliche saying it because any designer listening will roll their eyes at me. But if you want a very, very reliable plant, that's it.
Love that. Love a geranium. How about you, Jojo?
Plant. I've got a clue. I'd kill anything.
You can pass if you want.
Well, it's really funny actually.
Fake one.
One of my best mates. Yeah, I'd kill that. One of my best mates bought me a houseplant that was called the unkillable houseplant. Like she was like, you can't kill this thing, no matter what. Like you can't kill. And sure enough, 6 months later, it was dead. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, quickly, another question coming for you then, Jojo.
Or ivy.
What is ivy?
You can't kill that. Yeah,
that is a tough old plant.
The Japanese knotweed, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Love that.
Okay, Jojo, one for you then. What is your go-to design hack or tip for people?
Oh gosh, that is good. Okay, it's got to be my cushion trick, really. For anyone listening and has floppy cushions, always. So when you buy a cushion case, and it's a say 50 centimeter cushion case, you want to buy a 60 centimeter filler so that it's really nice and thick and plump. You assume if you buy a cushion case, it's going to be 50 centimeters, therefore the filler's 50 centimeters. You always need to size up.
That is
I've got loads of tips though. What's another one? No short curtains.
That's a strong one.
It's not really a tip though, is it? But that's a big one for me. No short curtains. I'm going to finish this and then I'll think of loads of really good ones that are far more interesting.
The cushion one's a great one.
All I'll say is just you got to listen to the podcast.
Just tune in.
Yeah.
Plug. Okay, and God forbid, house and garden are burning down. You can each save one item. What would you rescue?
After the children, or?
Yeah, after living creatures. Yeah.
After living creatures. Okay. Oh, that's really.
Is it really sad that as a business owner, my first thought was quick, grab the computer? Like, I don't know what it's all on the cloud. Isn't that pathetic? But I'm just like, quick, grab the computer. No, I can't. That's so like meaningless.
Here's the funny thing though. I think because I'm an interior designer and my house, I have little things that are sentimental to me, like my pregnancy tests that I still get all these years later. Yeah, there's one little box I've got that I'd probably go for. But in general, it's probably things to do with the kids. There's nothing in the house I feel particularly sentimental about because I'm so used to buying things for interiors that the amount of times we've been doing a project for a client and I'll look at something in my house and be like, that's so perfect for them. And then I'll take it out of my house and give it to them. So it's a really funny thing with interiors. I think for being an interior designer, I don't see things in my home as being quite so. It's the things that matter to me personally, not the actual. So yeah,
that's lovely. Okay,
no, with one that's funny how it makes you very unromantic, doesn't it?
It does. Unromantic.
It'd probably be my kids' favourite teddies. You know what they would be upset to lose.
Yes, exactly the same.
Gosh, selfless, you two. I love it.
Oh. Look at us polishing our halos.
Yeah, and where's one place you both turn to for inspiration, whether it's for gardens or interiors?
For me, it's travel in general. Everywhere I go gives me new inspiration. So my favourite thing to do is to go to, particularly in the UK, but any sort of gardens in the UK that I can go to. And I think getting out of the house, getting out of your locale and going to new spaces is where I gather all of my inspiration. But if I had to pick one, it would probably be the Newt in Somerset, because that is like gardening Disney. It is spectacular for plants and for hard materials. How about you, Jojo?
It varies. Honestly, I can't tell you how much it varies. It's definitely, I get the most inspiration when I see things physically. So we can use Pinterest, we can use Instagram, we can use, digital inspiration. But actually, I think it's when you physically see something and feel something that you get that inspiration. So like you might go on holiday somewhere to Italy and you see a tile or a particular colour, and it's the feel that you get from it that actually gives you the most inspiration. So I think it varies a lot as well, because the design world, it's certainly, I like to keep things, I like to be innovative with our designs and ensure that every project is different, and we're very customer centric. So I don't like all our projects to be the same, and I don't like to use all the same things, even down to the fabrics that we choose or the colours that we put on the walls, whatever it is. So I think it's I think the inspiration keeps coming, and it can just vary depending on what's going on at the time. But travel and certainly like restaurants, new restaurants and pubs, and even just walking down the street, you might see a tile or particular, the way a paving's laid or something really small, or a colour that you see on a building that will really catch your eye. So
I mean, what's really funny about, if Jojo and I go out together, we'll start
yeah.
commenting on bricks. Or
Yeah.
look at that pattern.
God, and I'm stroking a chair, or I'm looking underneath a table, and she's off out in the garden, like, look at
the landscape, look at this plant. So it's amazing seeing different landscapes is so inspiring. And then, but even just going out in London, it's amazing what sort of all the different options and everything that comes. So being out and about, travel, new landscapes,
cities as well. I love being in new cities, like Bath or York or London. There's so much variation in cities and what you can see.
So much. I love a good Bath, lovely stone. London, lots of tiles. Love that.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah,
all
doors, architraves, old architectural details.
Oh, stop it.
Stop it.
Stop it. Stop it. Keep talking.
Okay, well, last one. What advice do you have for people who are maybe thinking about starting a career in either design or gardening?
Don't do it.
Think again.
Strap yourself in. I'm going to say the first bit of advice I'm genuinely going to give is go into it really knowing what you're getting into. And I think it's quite a misunderstood industry. It's a brilliant industry, but it's not... I shouldn't go into this with a negative, because it is an amazing industry to be in, and of course we both do it because we love it. But just understand how much hard work is involved. It is not a walk in the park. It is not fluffing cushions. It is not walking around shops picking. It's not. 95% of it is really, you're managing budgets, clients, timelines, contractors, technical drawing, running around, on your hands and knees. It's really not glamorous at all, and it's bloody hard work. But it's brilliant. I wouldn't do anything else.
Oh, lovely. God, that's quite hard to follow there, Polly. What have you got?
I know. I mean, I guess adding, yes, it's deeply administrative, and any sort of fantasy about spending a lot of time in the garden is just false. But I think for me, what I would say anyone wanted to get into the industry within the garden realm is get to know your plants. And that means, volunteering if you have the luxury of being able to do that, or if not, going to work anywhere that you can, where you can actually work with the plants, because it's all very well learning about them in books, but until you have seen how these plants grow. So grow them in your garden, go and volunteer or go and help in friends' gardens, get to know your plants, go to the garden centre, test yourself on what plants are, because it's so little about solely design and so much about how different plants behave, and there are thousands of them. So I think the more plant knowledge you have, the stronger you will be as a garden designer, landscape designer.
And actually, that's brilliant, Paul, because I completely agree. That's very transferable into interiors as well. And I always feel sort of, we obviously get a lot of people reaching out saying, can we come and do work experience with you? And I sort of say the problem is, I think you really do these days need to have experience and a degree. And I'm afraid that does mean that it's not like you can walk straight in the door somewhere without having some form of a degree or a sort of an amount of work experience. Certainly it definitely requires experience in the industry. Even just working in a shop, like a fabric shop, or there's so many different elements to design that you need to sort of polish your skills at. So
So get out there, get hustling and experimenting.
Get out there, get it.
That's
yeah
it.
Get out there.
Oh, well, thank you so much for talking to me today, and honestly wish you all the best at Chelsea and beyond. Very excited to tune into the ins and the outs, and Ollie, I'll drop you a message about serial killers later on.
Yeah, we'll talk. I have some ideas.
We'll talk.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, Molly. Thanks for having us.
Such a pleasure.
What a hoot we had recording this one. Jojo, Polly, thank you so much. And I hope you have a brilliant time at the Chelsea Flower Show.
And thank you, lovely listeners, for tuning in. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so hit me up for natter, slide into my DMs, or leave a review. It honestly means the world and keeps the podcast going. You can, of course, find all of our lovely spaces and many more in the new Curated Spaces platform. Head to app.curatedSpaces.club to explore the whole collection and start planning your next getaway. And I'll be back very soon with more stories and inside scoops, so I'll catch you then for more Curated Spaces.